Hey guys, go ahead and get settled. Adjust the pillows, pull up the blankets. Tonight, we're going to drift back in time. Way back. We're traveling to ancient Greece, not the one of historical record, full of dates and battles, but the Greece of myth, the one that lived in people's minds around the fire. Our journey tonight will be a long, meandering one. We'll start at the very beginning, when there was nothing but potential. We'll watch as gods are born from thin air and solid earth, and see how they immediately start behaving like a dysfunctional family on a holiday weekend. Think Succession at Thanksgiving, but with lightning. We'll meet heroes who were part superstar, part public menace. We'll explore love stories that were less about romance and more about beautiful, chaotic mistakes. So essentially, The Bachelor, Mount Olympus edition. There's nothing you need to do, no facts to memorize. Think of this as a guided tour through a half-remembered dream. If a story catches your interest, you can follow it for a while. If your mind wanders, that's perfectly fine too. The sound of my voice is just here to keep you company, a soft anchor as you begin to drift. So close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and let go of the day. Let's begin. Before anything had a name, before there was up or down, light or dark, there was simply chaos. Don't picture noise and confusion. This wasn't a messy room or a frantic marketplace. This chaos was a vast, quiet, formless void. Not the YouTube comments section, far, far quieter. Imagine the deepest, most silent part of space, but without even the pinpricks of stars. It was pure potential, an emptiness waiting to be filled. It was less a being and more of a state, a yawning gap. From this immense quiet, the first beings began to separate themselves, like cream rising to the top of milk. First came Gaia, the earth. She was wide, solid, and dependable, the foundation for everything that would ever grow, walk, or build. She wasn't just dirt and rock. She was the nurturing instinct itself, the broad-bosomed mother to all. Almost immediately after her appeared Tartarus, the great, gloomy pit beneath the earth. If Gaia was the surface, Tartarus was the unfathomable depth, a place of shadows and correction. And then came Eros, not the chubby baby with wings and a bow we see on Valentine cards. This original Eros was a fundamental force of nature. He was desire, attraction, the principle that pulls things together. Without Eros, nothing new could ever be created. He was the spark, the cosmic gravity that ensures life seeks life, more universal physics engine than diapered Valentine's mascot. Cupid is the PG-13 reboot. Finally, from chaos emerged two more entities, Erebus, profound darkness, and Nyx, the night. Nyx was powerful, a figure of deep mystery. Even Zeus, generations later, would be wary of making her angry. From Nyx and Erebus came Ether, the bright upper air where the gods would live, and Hemera, the day. Night and day began their eternal cycle, chasing each other across the sky, never quite meeting. So now we have a stage. We have earth below, night and day cycling above, and desire floating through it all. But Gaia, the earth, was lonely. She longed for a partner to cover her, someone equal to her vastness. So through her own power, she created Uranus, the sky. He arched over her, glittering with stars, a perfect mirror to her form. Gaia and Uranus became the first couple, and they had children, lots of children. First came the 12 Titans, 6 male and 6 female. These weren't grotesque monsters. They were powerful, beautiful beings, personifications of natural forces. Oceanus, who encircled the world as a great river, Hyperion, the Titan of light, Rhea, the future mother of gods, and Cronus, the youngest, a little more clever, perhaps a little more ambitious than the others. After the Titans, Gaia gave birth to a different kind of being, the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants, master craftsmen with immense strength. They weren't just big, they were brilliant artisans. They would later forge weapons of incredible power. Then came the Hekatoncheires, the 100-handed ones. These were truly intimidating, each possessing 50 heads and 100 arms. They were forces of pure chaotic strength. Uranus looked at his children, especially the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones, and felt disgust, maybe fear. They were too much, too powerful, too strange. They weren't the serene, starry sky he represented. So he did something truly awful. He took these children and pushed them back into Gaia, deep within the earth, imprisoning them in her womb. Imagine Gaia's pain, physical agony from her children trapped inside her, and emotional anguish from her husband's cruelty. She endured it for as long as she could, but resentment hardened within her. She decided Uranus had to be stopped. She went to her other children, the Titans, and pleaded for help. She fashioned a new metal, grey and unyielding, into a massive sickle, a tool for harvesting. "Your father has become a tyrant," she told them. "He fears your strength. Who among you will help me end his rule?" The Titans were silent. They feared Uranus, all except one. Cronus, the youngest, stepped forward. He felt his mother's pain, but perhaps he also saw an opportunity. He took the sickle from Gaia. That night, when Uranus descended to embrace Gaia, Cronus and several of his brothers lay in wait. They seized their father, held him down, and Cronus used the great sickle to separate sky from earth permanently. From this brutal act, several new beings were born. From the drops of blood that fell onto Gaia sprang the Erinyes, or Furies, relentless spirits of vengeance who pursue those who commit crimes against family. And where the severed parts of Uranus fell into the sea, foam gathered, and from that foam emerged Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, born from violence and ocean spray, a plot twist even Marvel would save for a post-credits reveal. With Uranus banished, Cronus became the new king. The Titans were free, and a new era began. The reign of Cronus is often called the Golden Age. It's remembered as a time of perfect peace and abundance. Mortals lived like gods, without work, without sorrow, without old age. When they passed, it was as gentle as falling asleep. The earth provided food without needing to be ploughed. There was no war, no law, because everyone acted justly. It sounds idyllic, doesn't it? But there's a deep irony here. The ruler presiding over this perfect world, Cronus, was a deeply paranoid tyrant. He had overthrown his father, and he lived in constant fear that one of his own children would do the same to him. His father Uranus and mother Gaia had prophesied it. You will be undone by your own offspring. Cronus married his sister, the Titan Rhea. Rhea was gentle, a goddess of comfort and flow. When their first child, Hestia, was born, Cronus did something even more horrifying than his father had done. He didn't imprison the baby, he swallowed her whole. Rhea was horrified, but what could she do? When her next child, Demeter, was born, Cronus swallowed her too. Then Hera, then Hades, then Poseidon. Each time, Rhea's heart broke, and Cronus's paranoia was briefly eased, only to return stronger. He was effectively curating a perfect world outside, while his insides were a prison of his own making. filled with his divine, immortal, and presumably very confused children. When Rhea became pregnant with her sixth child, she couldn't bear the thought of losing another. She went to her parents, Gaia and Uranus, for advice. They sympathized with her plight. They advised her to go to the island of Crete to give birth in secret. When the baby boy, Zeus, was born, Rhea hid him away in a deep cave on Mount Ida. To deceive Cronus, Rhea wrapped a large stone in swaddling clothes. She presented it to her husband, telling him it was their newborn son. Cronus, blinded by his fear and perhaps not paying much attention, took the bundle and swallowed it without a second thought. He believed he had once again cheated fate. So while Cronus ruled over his golden age, completely oblivious, his downfall was being raised far away. Zeus grew up in the care of nymphs, hidden in the Cretan wilderness. He was nursed by a goat named Amalthea, whose horn, when broken, became the cornucopia, the horn of plenty, capable of producing endless food and drink. Protectors called the Hecatocheires, warrior spirits, would clash their spears against their shields whenever baby Zeus cried, drowning out the noise so Cronus wouldn't hear him from the heavens. Zeus grew to manhood quickly, filled with power and a burning desire for justice for his siblings and mother. When he was ready, Gaia helped him devise a plan. Zeus disguised himself as a cupbearer and served Cronus a special concoction, a mixture of wine and mustard, perhaps. The potion made Cronus violently ill. First, he vomited up the stone, which was later placed at Delphi as a sacred object. Then, one by one, he brought up his children, whole and unharmed, now fully grown adults. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon emerged, ready to challenge their father. Imagine their first breath of freedom, their first sight of the brother who had saved them. The stage was set for a cosmic war. The war between the Titans and the new generation of gods, the Olympians, wasn't a quick skirmish. It lasted for 10 long years. Think of it as a decade-long global conflict where the weapons were mountains and lightning bolts. The very foundations of the world shook. The Titans, led by Cronus and his powerful brother Atlas, fought from Mount Othrys. The Olympians, led by Zeus, fought from Mount Olympus. At first, the war was a stalemate. The Titans were immensely powerful, forces of nature that were hard to contain. Zeus knew he needed an edge. He remembered the stories his mother told him about his other uncles, imprisoned deep within Tartarus by Uranus. Gaia advised Zeus to free them. Zeus descended into the depths and released the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones. The Cyclopes, grateful for their freedom, pledged their loyalty to Zeus and got to work doing what they did best, crafting. They forged 3 magnificent weapons. For Zeus, they created the thunderbolt, the ultimate weapon of power and authority. For Poseidon, they crafted the trident, giving him command over earthquakes in the sea. And for Hades, they made the helm of darkness, a cap that rendered its wearer completely invisible. The 100-handed ones joined the battle as well. With their multiple arms, they could hurl hundreds of boulders at once, devastating the Titan ranks. The tide of the war began to turn. In one final, cataclysmic battle, Zeus unleashed the full power of his thunderbolts. The earth burned, the seas boiled, and the sky itself seemed to collapse. The Titans were overwhelmed. Most were rounded up and cast down into Tartarus, the deep abyss, to be imprisoned for eternity. Atlas, as a special punishment for leading the Titans, was condemned to stand at the western edge of the world and hold up the heavens on his shoulders forever. A few Titans who had sided with Zeus, like Prometheus, were spared. With Cronus defeated, the reign of the Titans was over. The universe needed new management. Zeus and his brothers, Poseidon and Hades, decided to divide the cosmos. They drew lots to ensure fairness. Zeus won the draw and became king of the gods, ruler of the sky and Mount Olympus. Poseidon drew the seas, becoming lord of all oceans and waterways. Hades drew the short straw, quite literally. He received the Underworld, the vast, gloomy realm of the dead. It wasn't a role he particularly wanted, but he accepted his duty with a certain grim dignity. Thus began the age of the Olympians. Mount Olympus became their home, a palace above the clouds, far from the concerns of mortals below. The main council consisted of 12 gods, a collection of siblings and children of Zeus, each with their own domain and personality. Let's meet the new board of directors for Olympus Incorporated. At the top, of course, is Zeus, the CEO, king of gods and men, god of thunder, law, and order. He's the one who maintains balance in the cosmos, but he struggles immensely to maintain balance in his personal life. He's powerful and often just, but also impulsive, arrogant, and has absolutely zero self-control when it comes to attractive mortals, nymphs, or minor goddesses. Imagine an HR department that is just a thundercloud with a clipboard. Beside him sits his sister and wife, Hera, the Queen of Heaven. She is the goddess of marriage, women, and childbirth. Hera is regal, powerful, and deeply committed to the sanctity of her domain. Unfortunately, being married to Zeus means her primary occupation becomes managing the fallout from his affairs. She channels her rage, not usually at Zeus himself, he's too powerful, but at his lovers and their children. Her jealousy is legendary, and frankly, completely understandable. She didn't ask for this. She's the long-suffering executive spouse who knows everything and resents everyone for it. Then there's Poseidon, god of the sea. Imagine him as the temperamental, wealthy brother who lives on a yacht. He's moody and unpredictable, like the ocean itself. When he strikes his trident on the earth, he creates earthquakes. When he's pleased, he offers calm seas and new islands. When he's angry, he sends tsunamis and sea monsters. He also had a competitive streak, especially with his niece Athena, constantly vying for the patronage of cities. And Hestia, the eldest sister, goddess of the hearth and home. Hestia is perhaps the most peaceful and stable of all the Olympians. She represents the warmth and security of a home fire. In many ways, she's the heart of Olympus and civilization itself. She never married, never took part in the endless drama and political squabbles. She simply tended the sacred flame. She's the quiet family member who just wants everyone to get along and stay for dinner. Next, we have Demeter, goddess of agriculture and the harvest. She's the nurturing force that makes the grain grow. Her moods directly affect the seasons. When she's happy, the world blooms. When she grieves, winter descends upon the land. She is fiercely protective, especially of her daughter, Persephone. These are the first generation Olympians. Now for Zeus's children, who make up the rest of the council. First, there's Athena, born in the most dramatic way possible. Zeus had a relationship with Metis, the Titan goddess of wisdom. An oracle warned him that a son born from Metis would overthrow him, just as he had overthrown Cronus. So, Zeus took a page from his father's playbook, but with a twist. He tricked Metis into turning into a fly and swallowed her. He thought he'd solved the problem. Sometime later, Zeus developed a splitting headache. It became so unbearable that he asked Hephaestus to crack open his skull with an axe. From Zeus's head sprang Athena, fully grown and clad in armor, shouting a war cry. Having absorbed Moides, Zeus kept the wisdom, and Athena became the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and warfare. She's a brilliant tactician, a patron of heroes and craftspeople, and a protector of cities, most notably Athens. Then there's Apollo, the golden boy, a god of music, poetry, prophecy, medicine, and the sun. He is the image of order and civilization. He drives the sun chariot across the sky, plays music so beautiful it can charm stones, and delivers cryptic prophecies through his oracle at Delphi. But beneath that perfect exterior, Apollo has a dark side. He can be incredibly vain and ruthless when crossed. He's the overachieving prodigy who expects perfection from everyone and has very little patience for failure. His twin sister is Artemis, goddess of the hunt, wild animals, and the moon. She is fiercely independent and vowed to remain eternally chaste. She roams the forests with her band of nymphs, a protector of young girls and wild creatures. If Apollo represents civilization, Artemis represents the untamed wilderness. Cross her or harm one of her followers, and her arrows fly swiftly and without mercy. She values her freedom above all else. Ares is the god of war. Unlike Athena, who represents strategy and just conflict, Ares embodies the bloody, chaotic, brutal aspect of battle. He revels in violence and bloodshed. Frankly, most of Aah's other gods don't like him very much. He's impulsive, aggressive, and often finds himself on the losing side of conflicts, especially against Athena. He's the hot-headed brawler of the family. Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and desire. As we remember, she was born from the sea foam after Cronus attacked Uranus. She possesses a magic girdle that makes her irresistible to gods and mortals alike. Love, in her hands, is often a source of chaos and disruption. She's not so much about romantic partnership as she is about overwhelming passion and attraction. Zeus, wary of her power causing wars among the gods, married her off to Hephaestus, the god of fire, metalworking, and craftsmanship. Hephaestus had a difficult start. He was born lame, and his mother, Hera, ashamed of his imperfection, threw him from Mount Olympus into the sea. He was rescued by sea nymphs and grew up to become the most skilled artisan imaginable. He built the palaces on Olympus, crafted Achilles' armor, and created intricate automatons. Hephaestus is the hard-working, underappreciated genius of the family. He's often bitter about his treatment and his unfaithful wife, Aphrodite, but finds solace in his forge. Finally, there's Hermes, the messenger god. He's the god of travelers, thieves, merchants, and boundaries. He wears winged sandals and carries a staff entwined with 2 snakes. Hermes is clever, fast, and charming. He's the family fixer, the one who carries messages between Olympus, Earth, and the Underworld. He invented the lyre on the day he was born, and then immediately stole Apollo's cattle. He's a trickster, but a lovable one, always moving, always negotiating. This group forms the core of the Olympian family, a collection of immense power and equally immense flaws. They bicker, they feud, they love, and they interfere constantly in the lives of mortals below. Now let's turn our attention to humanity, the creation that would become the gods' favorite and most tormented pet project. The creation of humans has a few different stories. One of the most compelling involves 2 titans who sided with Zeus during the war. Prometheus, whose name means forethought, and his brother Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought. After the war, Zeus tasked the brothers with populating the earth with creatures. Epimetheus, impulsive and not much of a planner, eagerly took on the job of distributing gifts to the animals, He gave out courage, speed, strength, fur, feathers, and shells. By the time he got to humanity, a creature molded from clay by Prometheus, there were no gifts left. Humans were left naked, weak, and defenseless against the elements and predators. Prometheus looked at his creation and felt deep compassion. He saw their potential, but knew they couldn't survive without help. He decided to give them something forbidden, something the gods kept for themselves: fire. Fire represented not just warmth and safety, but technology, knowledge, and civilization. Prometheus traveled to Olympus, lit a torch from the sun chariot or Hephaestus' forge, and brought fire down to humanity. With fire, humans learned to cook food, forge tools, build homes, and gather together to share stories. Civilization began to flourish. When Zeus found out, he was furious. This wasn't just theft, it was insubordination. It elevated mortals, bringing them closer to the gods, and Zeus did not appreciate his authority being challenged or his creations getting too big for their britches. Prometheus's punishment was severe and terrible. Zeus had him chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains. Every day, an eagle would fly down and eat Prometheus's liver. Every night, because he was immortal, his liver would regenerate, only for the torment to repeat itself the next day, for eternity. But Zeus felt humanity needed to be punished too, for accepting the gift. His punishment was more subtle, more insidious. He commissioned Hephaestus to create a new being, the first woman. Hephaestus sculpted her from earth and water. Athena breathed life into her and taught her weaving. Aphrodite gave her beauty and grace. Hermes gave her a sly, deceptive nature and a knavish heart. They named her Pandora, meaning all-gifted. Zeus presented Pandora as a gift to Epimetheus, who, true to his name, accepted her without thinking of the consequences. Despite Prometheus having warned him never to accept gifts from Zeus, Pandora arrived with a beautifully ornate jar, often mistranslated as a box. Zeus had instructed her never to open it, but curiosity, a trait gifted to her by the gods, gnawed at her. Eventually, she couldn't resist. She lifted the lid just a crack. Out flew all the evils of the world that the gods had locked inside. Disease, sorrow, poverty, strife, and despair. They scattered across the earth, plaguing humanity forever. Pandora quickly shut the lid, but it was too late. Only one thing remained trapped inside the jar. Elpis, hope, the original unboxing video gone spectacularly wrong. So, according to this myth, humanity lives in a world full of suffering, with only hope to cling to, all because of a power struggle between a compassionate titan and a prideful god. The relationship between gods and mortals was always complicated. Mortals were expected to honor the gods through sacrifice and prayer. A typical household would have a small shrine near the hearth, dedicated to Hestia, and perhaps another outside dedicated to Zeus as protector of property. Small offerings of food and wine were common. But the gods were fickle. They demanded devotion, but offered protection that could be withdrawn at any moment. They saw mortals as playthings, pieces on a grand chessboard. A mortal woman's beauty might attract a god, resulting in a semi-divine child, but it would almost certainly attract Hera's wrath, bringing ruin to the entire family. A king who boasted he was a better hunter than Artemis might find his kingdom struck by plague. It was a precarious existence, living under the gaze of such powerful, emotional, and very human-like deities. Let's explore some of these divine interactions, focusing on the gods who govern the most chaotic human experiences: love and art. We've already met Aphrodite, born of sea foam and violence, She was married to Hephaestus, the steady, brilliant craftsman. It was a classic mismatch, Beauty and the Beast, or perhaps more accurately, the supermodel and the reclusive engineer. Aphrodite was not faithful. Her most famous affair was with Ares, the god of war. Imagine the contrast. Hephaestus's forge, full of constructive fire, intellect, and creation. Ares' domain, full of destructive fire, rage, and chaos. Aphrodite was drawn to Ares' raw passion. They thought they were being discreet, but Helios, the sun god, sees everything. Helios informed Hephaestus. Hephaestus, being a craftsman, planned a craftsman's revenge. He didn't challenge Ares to a fight. Instead, he forged an invisible, unbreakable net of bronze threads, as fine as spider silk. He draped it over his marriage bed and told Aphrodite he was taking a trip to Lemnos, his favorite island. As soon as he left, Ares arrived. In the middle of their rendezvous, the net sprang from the ceiling, trapping them together. Hephaestus returned, but he didn't come alone. He called all the other Olympian gods to come and see. "Behold," he shouted, "a spectacle to make you laugh and cry. See how my wife dishonors me, and how the god of war is caught by a craftsman's skill." The gods gathered around. Apollo asked Hermes if he'd mind being in Ares' position. Hermes famously replied that he wouldn't mind at all, even if there were 3 times as many nets and all the goddesses were watching. The gods roared with laughter. Ares and Aphrodite were utterly humiliated. Hephaestus would only release them after Zeus guaranteed Ares would pay a fine. Love, in this story, is not just powerful. It's also deeply embarrassing, the ancient equivalent of being caught on a Ring doorbell, only with more. Bronze filigree and public shaming. Then there's Apollo, the god of music and art. For all his grace, he was remarkably unlucky in love. One of his most famous pursuits was the nymph Daphne. Eros, angry at Apollo for mocking his archery skills, shot Apollo with a golden arrow of infatuation and shot Daphne with a lead arrow of repulsion. Apollo chased Daphne relentlessly. Terrified and exhausted, Daphne prayed to her father, the river god Peneus, to save her. Just as Apollo caught up to her, her father answered. Her skin turned to bark, her hair to leaves, and her arms to branches. She transformed into a laurel tree. Apollo, heartbroken, declared the laurel tree sacred to him, and its leaves became the victor's crown. Art and beauty could also be sources of divine jealousy. Take Arachne, a mortal woman from Lydia, who was a weaver of unparalleled skill. She wove tapestries so beautiful they seemed alive. People whispered that Athena herself must have taught her. Arachne, full of pride, scoffed at this. "I taught myself," she declared. "I could beat Athena in a contest." This was a direct challenge, and Athena, goddess of craft, couldn't let it stand. She appeared to Arachne, disguised as an old woman, and advised her to be more modest. Arachne dismissed her, so Athena revealed herself, and the contest began. Athena wove a tapestry depicting the majesty of the gods and the terrible fate of mortals who challenged them. It was magnificent, a warning. Arachne, in response, wove a tapestry depicting all the times the gods, especially Zeus, had disguised themselves to deceive and abuse mortal women. Her work was technically flawless, a masterpiece of art and political commentary. Athena, enraged by the skill and the subject matter, couldn't find a single flaw in the weaving, so she attacked Arachne, tearing the tapestry to shreds and striking the woman. Arachne, overcome with despair and humiliation, tried to hang herself. Athena, perhaps feeling a twinge of pity, or perhaps wanting to devise a more fitting punishment, saved her from death, but transformed her. "You will hang," Athena said, "but you will also weave forever." She turned Arachne into the first spider, destined to spin intricate webs for all time. A chilling reminder that being better than a god, even in art, is a dangerous game. Now let's take a journey to a realm that every mortal, hero, or commoner would one day visit. Let's talk about the Underworld. When we think of the Underworld, we often picture a place of fire and eternal punishment. But for the Greeks, it was mostly just grey. It was the land of the dead, ruled by Hades, and its primary characteristic was finality. Hades himself wasn't a devil figure. He wasn't evil, he was dutiful. He was the stern, wealthy ruler of a vast underground kingdom who ensured that the dead stayed dead. He rarely left his domain, and he guarded its borders jealously. Think DMV waiting room, but everyone's a very polite shadow. To get there, a soul first had to cross the river Styx, or sometimes the Acheron, the river of woe. The ferryman was Charon, a grim figure who demanded payment, a coin placed in the mouth of the deceased before burial. Those buried without proper rites or without the fare were doomed to wander the banks for 100 years. Guarding the gates of Hades' palace was Cerberus, the three-headed dog with a serpent's tail. Cerberus was friendly to new arrivals, welcoming them in, but he would viciously prevent anyone from trying to leave. Once inside, souls were judged. The vast majority ended up in the Asphodel Meadows. This wasn't a place of torment, but one of endless, joyless monotony. The shades of ordinary people wandered aimlessly, like ghosts in a fog, retaining their memories but lacking passion or purpose. It was a bleak, boring eternity. For those who lived exceptionally virtuous lives or were great heroes, there was Elysium or the Elysian Fields. This was a paradise, a place of eternal spring, sunlight, and leisure. Heroes reconnected with loved ones and enjoyed a peaceful afterlife. For the truly wicked, those who directly offended the gods, like Sisyphus or Tantalus, there was Tartarus. Sisyphus was condemned to forever roll a boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down just before he reached the summit, or, as many of us call it now, email. Tantalus was forced to stand in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree. Whenever he bent to drink, the water receded, and whenever he reached for fruit, the branches pulled away, leaving him eternally tantalized. The most famous myth associated with Hades is, of course, his marriage to Persephone. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest. She was young, beautiful, and lived among flowers. Hades, seeing her from his dark realm, fell in love, and decided he must have her as his queen. Knowing Demeter would never agree, he abducted her, pulling her down into the earth as she was picking flowers. Demeter was overcome with grief. She searched the entire world for her daughter, neglecting her duties. Crops failed, famine spread across the earth, and humanity faced extinction. Demeter learned from Helios that Hades had taken Persephone with Zeus's permission. Enraged, she refused to let anything grow until her daughter was returned. Zeus finally relented and sent Hermes to retrieve Persephone. Hades agreed to let her go, but with one condition. He offered her a pomegranate seed before she left. Persephone, having eaten nothing else during her captivity, ate a few seeds. This simple act bound her to the underworld. A compromise was reached. Persephone would spend part of the year on Earth with her mother, bringing spring and summer. The rest of the year, she would return to the underworld as its queen, during which time Demeter would grieve, bringing autumn and winter. Modern interpretations often romanticize the relationship between Hades and Persephone, painting Hades as a lonely, misunderstood figure who treated his queen with respect. While the original myth focuses more on the violation and Demeter's grief, it's true that Persephone grew into her role as a powerful and formidable queen, ruling alongside Hades with authority. Of course, no tour of Greek mythology would be complete without the heroes. These were the larger-than-life figures, often demigods, who acted as intermediaries between the divine and mortal worlds. They were the original celebrities, but their lives were rarely easy. Take Perseus. His story starts with a prophecy given to King Acrisius that his grandson would kill him. To prevent this, Acrisius locked his daughter Danae in a bronze chamber. But Zeus, ever resourceful, transformed himself into a shower of golden rain, seeped through the ceiling and visited her. Perseus was born. Acrisius, terrified but unwilling to directly kill his kin, set Danae and baby Perseus adrift in a wooden chest on the sea. They washed ashore on an island where they were taken in by a kind fisherman. The island's king, Polydectes, desired Danae, but Perseus protected her. To get rid of him, Polydectes sent Perseus on an impossible quest. Bring back the head of Medusa. Medusa was once a beautiful priestess, but after being assaulted by Poseidon in Athena's temple, Athena punished her by turning her hair into living snakes and making her gaze turn any living thing to stone. Perseus received help from the gods. Athena gave him a polished shield to use as a mirror. Hermes gave him a sword and winged sandals, and Hades gave him the helm of darkness for invisibility. Perseus found Medusa, avoided her gaze by looking at her reflection in the shield, and succeeded in decapitating her. From her neck sprang the winged horse Pegasus. On his way home, Perseus used Medusa's head to rescue Princess Andromeda from a sea monster, and later turned King Polydectes and his court to stone. The prophecy eventually came true when Perseus accidentally killed his grandfather with an errant discus throw at an athletic event. Perseus is often seen as the straightforward hero, but his story is built on divine aid and a great deal of luck. Then there's Theseus, the hero of Athens. His most famous exploit was slaying the Minotaur. King Minos of Crete, as punishment for Athens, demanded a tribute of 7 young men and 7 young women every 9 years to be fed to the Minotaur, a monster with the body of a man and the head of a bull, living in a vast labyrinth. Theseus volunteered to go. In Crete, Minos's daughter Ariadne fell in love with Theseus. She gave him a ball of thread, suggested by the labyrinth's creator Daedalus, to help him find his way out. Theseus slew the Minotaur and escaped with Ariadne. However, on the way back to Athens, he abandoned her on the island of Naxos while she slept. A true hero move. He also forgot to change his ship's sails from black to white, a prearranged signal to tell his father, King Aegeus, that he was alive. Aegeus, seeing the black sails approach, believed his son was dead and threw himself into the sea, which now bears his name, the Aegean Sea. Theseus became king, but through tragedy, born of his own forgetfulness, ancient ghosting, but maritime. Finally, we have Heracles, or Hercules, the greatest hero of them all, son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene. Heracles possessed superhuman strength from birth. Hera, in a jealous rage, made his life a constant series of trials. Her greatest act of cruelty came when Heracles was a grown man, happily married with children. Hera sent a fit of madness upon him, causing him to kill his entire family. To atone for this horrific act, Heracles sought guidance from the oracle at Delphi. He was ordered to serve King Eurystheus for 12 years and perform 10 labors. Eurystheus, goaded by Hera, made the labors seem impossible. Picture a to-do list assembled by your least favorite project manager. They included slaying the Nemean lion, whose hide was impervious to weapons, cleaning the massive Augean stables in a single day, which Heracles did by diverting 2 rivers, capturing Cerberus from the Underworld, and retrieving the golden apples of the Hesperides. Heracles completed them all through a combination of brute strength, cleverness, and divine assistance. He became a symbol of endurance, a mortal who, through immense suffering and labor, earned his place among the gods on Mount Olympus after his death. Let's step away from the mainstream gods and heroes for a moment, into the wilder, stranger corners of myth. Here we find the gods who didn't quite fit on Olympus, the spirits of the untamed places, and the monsters born from fear and chaos. First, there's Dionysus, the god of wine, revelry, and ecstatic frenzy. He was another son of Zeus, born from a mortal mother, Semele. Hera tricked Semele into asking Zeus to reveal his true divine form to her. When he did, she was instantly incinerated by his glory. Zeus managed to save the unborn Dionysus, sewing him into his own thigh to finish gestation. Dionysus is therefore twice born. Dionysus represents everything civilized society tries to suppress: raw emotion, liberation from convention, and the loss of self-control. His followers, particularly the Maenads or Bacchantes, would dance through the mountains in a state of ecstatic madness, tearing wild animals apart with their bare hands. He offered joy and release, but also profound danger. He was a late addition to Olympus, and some say Hestia gave up her seat for him, preferring the warmth of the hearth to the drama of the council. Then there is Pan, the god of the wild, shepherds, and flocks. He had the legs and horns of a goat and the upper body of a man. Pan was earthy and rustic, associated with nature in its rawest form. He was generally a cheerful figure, playing his pipes in the forest, but he could also inspire sudden, overwhelming fear in those who wandered into his domain, especially at noon. This feeling, a sudden, irrational terror in a quiet place, gives us our word: panic. In the shadows and at the crossroads, we find Hecate, goddess of magic, witchcraft, ghosts, and boundaries. Hecate is a complex figure, often depicted holding 2 torches and keys. She is a liminal goddess, existing between worlds. She assisted Demeter in her search for Persephone, lighting the way with her torches, and became Persephone's companion in the underworld. She was a protector of travelers at night, but also the patron of sorceresses like Medea. She represents the mystery that lies just beyond the firelight. And what would Greek myth be without its monsters? Beyond Medusa and the Minotaur, there were countless strange creatures. There was Lamia, once a beautiful queen loved by Zeus. Hera, in her rage, killed Lamia's children. Lamia went mad with grief and transformed into a monster that hunted and devoured other people's children. There were the Stymphalian birds, which had bronze beaks, sharp metallic feathers they could shoot like arrows, and poisonous dung. And there were the Empusa, shape-shifting demons in Hecate's service, often appearing as beautiful women with one bronze leg, who would lure young men to their doom. These creatures represented the fears of the ancient world: fear of the dark, fear of loss, fear of the unknown wild. As the night deepens and you drift closer to sleep, you might wonder why these stories lasted. Why have we carried these tales of flawed gods and tragic heroes for thousands of years? It's not because they offer simple moral lessons. Often they don't. Good people suffer, and villains sometimes prosper. It's not because they give us historically accurate accounts. They certainly don't do that. Perhaps it's because these myths are a perfect mirror of ourselves, written in large, bold letters. The gods' petty jealousies, their impulsive decisions, their moments of profound kindness and terrifying cruelty. It's all deeply human. Hera's rage over infidelity, Hephaestus' bitterness over being an outcast, Apollo's frustration when he can't get what he wants. These are emotions we recognize. The ancient Greeks looked at the chaotic world around them, earthquakes, plagues, sudden storms, the mysteries of love and death, and they created a narrative to explain it. They populated the universe with beings as complex and unpredictable as they were. In doing so, they gave voice to timeless anxieties and hopes. These stories remind us that even heroes make mistakes, that beauty can be dangerous, that wisdom is hard-won, and that life itself is a delicate balance between order and chaos. They remind us that for every act of creation, there is an echo of destruction, and that even in the deepest darkness, like Pandora's jar, there remains a small, persistent glimmer of hope. So let these ancient figures fade back into the soft shadows of your mind. Let Zeus and Hera continue their eternal argument on Olympus. Let Persephone return to her garden, and let Hades rule his quiet kingdom below. Let Heracles rest from his labors, and let the nymphs sleep peacefully in the woods. They have played their parts for tonight. There is nothing left to figure out, nothing left to hold on to. You are safe, secure, and drifting peacefully. The stories are over. The night is quiet. Sleep now. Good night.